Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today is our 12th episode of Method in Madness. I welcome all of you. And today we have a brilliant topic to talk about, and that's storytelling. And not just any storytelling, responsible storytelling. Today we have the privilege to talk to one of the leading storytellers of India, Lopamudra Mohanty. Lopamudra has been a great storyteller, and she has initiated lots of programs for children over the last couple of years. And she has this amazing new program that she started. It's an initiative, rather, which is called IBAC. And there she talks about how to inculcate mother language and storytelling in mother language. Lopa is by qualification a master's holder in rural management from XLRI, and she chose to leave her 10-year career in the banking industry to be with children and share stories with them. Thank you, Lopa, for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. A very
Thank
good
you. Thank you,
evening.
Lopa.
Thank you as well.
So,
Thank you, Vaishali.
Lopa, you have been telling stories to children, and you have so many programs that you have developed for children and teachers and parents at the same time. And your recent initiative, which is IBAC, is amazing. I mean, it has really touched me and moved me personally. And I thought, that is something, I think that this is something that is the need of the hour, has always been the need of the hour, to save languages. So today we are going to talk about responsible storytelling. There are lots of storytellers all around, and it's a great, moment in time now that we have so many storytellers around us, and people are slowly understanding the worth of storytelling. Yeah. So we will start with asking the question, what is responsible storytelling? And with storytelling, definitely there's responsibility. What kind of responsibility do you see as a mother, as a teacher, and as a human being?
Yeah. So, Vaishali, when I started doing storytelling for children, actually, when I started, it was only for children. And the reason behind my storytelling was how to go ahead and integrate literacy skills into storytelling. So that was the purpose that I started with when I started storytelling, basically. But while doing that, I came in contact with an organization that's called the Bookwala organization, and when I started working with them, they set up libraries at different orphanages. And when I went and did a story, when I continuously there was the story intervention which was happening from my side with children in the orphanages, and there was a particular child who was actually going through a counseling session, and she showed an immense amount of change in her behavior pattern. And that is when the counselor informed that this is because of some kind of positive intervention which is happening. And and this child is always talking about big buddy. So actually children call me big buddy, so I'm big buddy for children. And I love that name of mine because I really feel that I'm always a child, I'm always a friend, I'm an adult, I can be a teenager, so I'm a friend for each age group. So
And that's why your organization is called Big Buddy World.
Yes, that's our world of children, adults, senior citizens, anyone. So we are buddies for them, right? So that's when, Vaishali, I realized, because no doubt you read about, naturally when you're doing something, you're reading about it, and you read about, okay, storytelling is powerful, but that was limited to reading and understanding that. But that was the first time I experienced the power of storytelling. And I would say, yeah, for parents and for teachers, if they're listening, at that point of time, I realized that if a story can change a behavior pattern, or a story can change certain kind of, bring along certain kind of positivity in a child, or anyone, you let it, I mean, it doesn't matter, but the positivity, that means it is powerful. It is very powerful. And if it is powerful, then naturally it has to be used responsibly. Because it, if I don't do that storytelling in a responsible manner, then the positivity can become negativity. What I'm trying to achieve, if I'm not aware about what exactly, why exactly I'm doing that story, it might not go towards in the right path. So that's why I say it's very, very important as a parent, as a teacher, if I call myself as a storyteller, or if I'm telling story to my child or my students, please be careful about what kind of stories you are telling, how you are telling your story, what kind of words you are using. What is that? I'm not talking about sanitizing the story. I'm talking about researching on your story, understanding the story, and then going ahead and telling that, because you know that when you tell a story, that is what you have put that seed of thought in the child's mind. And that seed of thought, you don't know what it might lead to, right? So that's the reason I say that's a huge responsibility when you're telling a story, because the stories are something where they retain the information, whatever is told. And if it is something which is so powerful, then yes, it has to be done responsibly, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
So, everybody who have just joined us right now, we are in conversation with Lopamudra Mohanty. Lopamudra is a storyteller, and we are really, really happy to have her with us. So,
Same here.
Lopa, we are going to talk for another half an hour or so. And then we are going to open the discussion to our audience members.
Sure.
So there is a little, space where you can put in your comments, in the box.
Yeah.
So all of you who are watching us and listening to us right now, please keep sharing your thoughts and comments and your questions so that we can take them up after half an hour. All right. Lopa, let's move on to something that I have thought about. And I've also seen other storytellers thinking about the same. You just mentioned that sanitizing a story, right? So a few weeks back, there was a storyteller who reached out to all of us, all storytellers, not just storytellers, educators, teachers, artists, theater people, with regard to a particular story where the protagonist's mother does not give him dinner and punishes him to stay hungry the whole night. So she reached out to everybody and she asked that, should I say this? Should I really tell this to my children that yes, a mother can be that cruel, and she doesn't. She's not giving dinner to the boy, and it's a little boy. Should I sanitize it? How should I tell this part? So this is a big dilemma that many teachers and parents are, and I'm sure they can connect with this question. Because till what extent can we sanitize? And what is it that we have to tell? I mean, because some of the truth needs to go to the children as well, right? But how do we do that? Where to stop, where to draw that mark, and how to do it?
Okay. I'll tell you. So what happens is, when I'm talking about sanitizing and editing your stories, when it is how it can be done for different stories and all. Now, for example, if I go ahead and I tell a story where constantly I'm exposing the child to a story where it is about a stepmother, or the same question which you asked, a mother
Yes.
giving not giving food and cruel and all those things, right? Okay.
Hmm.
And then next day again I'm telling the story which has the same kind of narrative. Again I'm telling a story which might have the same kind of narrative. Okay.
Hmm.
In that manner, what I'm exactly doing is I am building a single narrative, the child, that mothers are cruel.
Hmm.
Are you getting it? Okay.
Hmm.
Suppose, for
Or
example, but
stepmothers are cruel to their
yeah, so suppose
stepdaughters or something.
whatever the story is, whatever the
Hmm.
story is, so stepmother,
Hmm.
stepsister, stepbrother, whatever. So what happens is every story, whatever I'm exposing my child to, has this concept of that stepmothers are cruel. Okay, so that is where we have a problem. That is where I'm telling that no, step of course if stepmothers are cruel, you have it in the story, you are telling that, but there are other stories where the stepmothers are also good.
Hmm.
Are we exposing our children to those kind of stories? That is where the child comes across both kinds of situations, that there can be people like this, there can be people like this also, you know. So both kind of people are important. I cannot say that okay, stepmothers are not cruel, I'll not expose that story also, because I
Hmm.
don't want my child to know about those kind of things. That is where, that is what you're doing, is sanitizing. Okay, but when I'm putting across stories, I'm saying that fine, and how did the person get over it? Or there is a story about this wonderful mother, and whether she's stepmother, whether she's a mother, whether she's gone ahead and she has sacrificed so many things and she has done so many things. So there are people like this as well, you know.
Hmm.
So that is what I'm talking about, exposing your child to all kinds of narratives. Let the child then get to know, because the child is getting prepared for the world. He knows that
Hmm.
there are good people, there are bad people, there are good situations, there are bad situations. What are you going to do at that situation? I can't
Hmm.
spoon feed my child. For example, like we were discussing last time also, Vaishali, I was
Hmm.
talking about Little Red Riding Hood story. Okay.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
if I say Little Red Riding Hood story, I can tell the story in this manner, that Little Red Riding Hood, you know, she wanted to go to her grandmother's house. The story can be told in this manner, the usual way of telling the story, whatever the story is written as.
Hmm.
Now, what can I, as an educator or as a parent, do something with the story?
Hmm.
What can I do so that the story becomes very powerful, and somewhere it is integrating lot of other things into the story? So I'll say, you know what? Wow. Little Red Riding Hood, my goodness, what a brave girl she was. One fine day, she got up and she told her mom that, Mama, I want to go to my grandma's house. And she wanted to go on her own, alone. She didn't fear, she was not afraid. Okay, because it's not. So, what are we doing over here? So, we are saying that girls can go alone.
So you're
We
highlighting a
just
certain part of
we
the
are saying that, right? No,
story.
you know, it's not about preaching, but the story, it's just integrated. And she told, I cannot go alone, Mama. So Mama says, no, I mean, there might be animals, there might be this. Oh, okay, but you have taught me how to deal with different kinds of people, right? I can go alone, not a problem, Mama. Says, I trust you. That's when the mother says, I trust you, my dear daughter. There's a belief of trust which we are getting into the child and the mother, and this is that the mother trusts. They have been given some values, and it says, I know that, and I really like it when you trust me, Mama. And then she says, but Mama says, I know that, but remember that when you go, there might be different strangers who will come and ask you. They might ask you something, so just be little careful that don't divulge all the information. Okay.
Hmm.
So, what we are doing over here, instead of saying don't talk to strangers, the moment I say
Hmm.
don't talk to strangers, I'm putting that seed of thought in the child that whenever outside, if there are strangers, I will not talk to them. So that means I am giving the instruction, don't talk to strangers. And the child understands, don't talk to strangers. Do I want my child to do that? If it's needed, the child has to talk with a stranger, but you need to know what you do, how you talk to a stranger when you are with a stranger. That is very important. than saying don't talk to strangers. So that's what I say, that I can get that into the story. I said, okay, if anyone talks to you, if you want to talk, talk. If you don't want to, it's your wish. But if you talk, you need to know what you need to say and what you should not say. That is what I'm talking about. Editing in your story, you're not changing the storyline, you're not doing anything, you're keeping the story as it is, but you're not sanitizing the story in the sense, I want to not tell this, I will not tell that, I will not do that, I will not expose my child to this kind of information, I will not do that. No, why? Let them get exposed and let them understand how to deal with that, and through your
Absolutely.
story. That is very important. So that's what I'm talking about when you're doing a story, researching and finding out what is that I can go ahead and put across, and the story becomes more powerful, you know, and
So
responsible. Yeah.
if I could understand it properly, then suppose I have a story where it's a person, a particular category of an animal is showed in a certain light. So I compensate that, like foxes are always cunning,
Yeah. Why?
wolves are
Yeah.
always cunning. I don't understand that. Why do monsters always have to be ghastly looking? Why?
Yeah. You
So
remember that? Yeah. So I'll tell you
so
one thing. I'll tell one. Sorry to interrupt, Vaishali. So
yeah,
there's this
yeah.
saying that a lion, if he, I mean, basically a lion doesn't know how to tell a story, and that's why the hunter is always glorified. Okay.
It's a very powerful
So,
statement.
yeah. So, if so, our responsibility as a storyteller is first go ahead and facilitate the lion to learn how to tell a story. The second is, still he is not able to tell his story. That is where we as storytellers come into picture to tell the story of the hunter as well as the lion. Both. I'm not talking about only the lion, because we think that is the victim. So it's not about only the lion, but the lion as well as the hunter. How do we go ahead and put across that story? So facilitating the lion to tell her story on from their side, and second is, of course, going ahead and telling their story till they are not able to tell the story. So this is what is very important for us to do as
Yeah.
storytellers. That is what our responsibility is.
Mm.
So I don't want, as you said, the fox, why he's always a bad one, or why, because that is what has been fed. That is what has we have
Yeah.
been
Also with
conditioned with.
snakes, the same thing with snakes, lizards, any reptile. Um, so
Exactly. So that is where it is a single narrative which is going on and on and on, and that is where we are trying to break that. So somewhere we say debunk the myth. Even we are coming with mythological stories where we are not putting it across as gods and goddesses and what has been told. It's a story, but how do we,
yes.
like for Dashavatar, we have made the story into where Vishnu is there, and we say he's a transformer wheel. He transforms. So
Yeah.
whenever the earth is in problem, you just have to say transformer V, and he comes in a different form, and he comes over there and he saves the world from whatever the situation is. And so I'm just saying, so that is where children can be put across, instead of feeding them that this is what you have to, whatever we have heard, in the same manner. Yeah.
Yeah. So coming back to what I was saying is that
Mm-hmm.
if I have a stereotypical story, then I should compensate that with a stereotypical story, something which is not stereotypical. Now, the problem here, Lopadi, is that we don't really the books that we get in bookstores. The regular bedtime stories, the regular stories that we get for children. I'm talking about little children over here. Are the same old stories. There are very few very good publications, publication houses who are publishing good stories. They're writing good content, but the general, the general public and the general books which are produced, and sold uh, in an everyday bookstore, a local bookstore, uh, have those mundane age-old, stories
Hmm.
without any kind of edits or any kind of reimagined, instances. So, how do you go about that?
Oh, nowadays, as you said, there are a lot of authors, Indian authors I'm talking about, coming up with wonderful stories. It's published and it's wonderful stories. Whether you take Tilika, whether you take, I mean, there are a lot
Katha,
of stories. Yeah, Katha, and so
Pratham also, yes.
yeah, I remember one story where we had. See, that's where we are taking. We have to be conscious. Even if I have a story, now I have a storybook where there is this boy where he is called Taklu.
Hmm.
Yeah, right, where is called Taklu. Now the story, if I take, then there might be parents will say that okay, I will not say Taklu because it's a Taklu is again naming, taking names and all those things which might happen.
Hmm.
But I would say that when we take that story, now that is where you start thinking what I can do with the story. Okay, it's a nice story. What can I do with the story? What is that is happening over here in the story? You have
Hmm.
a problem with the word Taklu, right? So these are the storybooks which are available. Now you say that you have a storybook where the name is Taklu. So what are you going to do? So that is where you have a wonderful opportunity to tell your children. So think about opportunities, what you can do with that storybooks when you're talking about the same old storybook stories. So if I take that story and I'll say, oh, he had this name and everyone used to call him Taklu. And he used to feel very bad because he didn't like that name. That is what I'm putting into the story. Okay, he never used to like it because everyone used to tease him with his because he did not have hair. Like for
Hmm.
example, if someone calls you, if you are dark, someone calls you like Kalu or something like that, would you like it? I'm putting the child in that position. And then one fine day he told, it's okay, that's what my parents loved, that's what my parents have given that name for me, and I
Hmm.
love my name. What is I can proudly say that yes, my name is Taklu. Yeah. So what I'm doing over here, I am going ahead and I'm saying it doesn't matter whether I have hair, I don't have hair, whatever. That is what my name is, and I love my name. So what we are doing, we are taking that story where it is nothing like this is written in the
Hmm.
storybook, but we have added that portion because we know that these things happen, and if this thing happen, how to deal with that. Are you getting it, Vaishali?
Hmm.
So we are adding that to the story. We are not changing the storyline. We are adding that emotion into the story that the child might
Story.
not like, the child might not have this, that, all those things. But we have taken the book. That is where. So we might say, oh, how can an author write like this or whatever. But at the end of the day, that is a wonderful opportunity to go ahead and take. So if you have a storybook, if you have something like that and you think that I need to tell this story
Hmm.
which is there in the age old manner, as you said, just go ahead and look out for opportunities what I can put across in the story, and that will give some kind of thinking or imagining or changing some kind of behavioral pattern in my child or in my student. I can add that to the storytelling when I'm talking about. Okay, I'm not talking about story reading, I'm telling about the storytelling part of it. Story reading, of course, you will read out whatever is there, and there you have to be very careful about what kind of books you select and what kind of books you expose to
Yes.
children depending upon the language and all. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Also, there's something that parents, I think, will agree that parents have to be natural storytellers. They have to be natural storytellers, and they have to be
Yeah.
story creators. I mean, it's the kind of they run out of books, they run out of
Books.
ideas. How do you how? I mean, there are lots of parents who are watching us today.
Uh-huh.
Um, what suggestion would you give, or if there is any method or a structure that a parent can follow and quickly cook up stories? Like
You know
weave a
what
story, not cook up, weave a story. Yeah.
what we do with children, so how parents and children together can form this, because I think that when you sit with your child and you tell a story, the reason I always tell parents to go ahead and tell stories, no doubt vocabulary and all those things are are important, okay,
Mm.
but the most important thing is, you are creating a beautiful memory for your child,
Mhm.
a very beautiful positive memory for your child, because nowadays we are all nuclear families. Most of us are nuclear families. We don't have our grandparents sitting and telling stories, because I'm sure people of my age, they will always say, oh, I had my grandparent telling me story and this, I have those memories which I talk about, and when I talk about that, I'm smiling, I'm happy and all those things. And that happiness, it's your responsibility to gift to your children,
Mm.
because right now they don't have the grandparents around, or they don't have the cousins around where you sit together and listen to ghost stories and all those things which our children are not experiencing. But who can give that experience? It's Professional storytellers can give you a very different kind of an environment, or if you send your child to us, it's a very different kind. But when it is you and your child sitting together, holding hands, sitting together, telling a story, and the child asking you questions, and you telling and giving an answer, and whatever, I mean, you are the best storyteller at that moment. No one can replace you. None of us can replace a parent telling a child. It's not about
Absolutely.
voice modulation, it's not about actions, nothing. It's just the love and the positive intent about you
Mm.
sharing. That's a very beautiful space which you are creating with your child. That's why I say, when the child grows up and he thinks back, he'll be thinking about these memories, and which will get a smile in his face. And that is what you're gifting to your child by doing this. That's why I tell, of course, you can teach, you can use literacy skills while you're doing your story. You can use behavioral skills, like, for example, if the child is not eating, then you can have a story which can, go ahead and tell him that, okay, it's very important, or junk food is not good, whatever. Taking problems from your home environment, you can put that into the story and tell to the child. Those
Mm.
things can be done. But all those things aside, most important is what you are creating at that point, of that magic you are creating when you are with your child. And that is very important, I would say. And when you're thinking about how to make it interesting and all, so we say, of course, we say, okay, fine. Now, can we go ahead? So you tell in the story, you have a character, one, I have a character, both of us, we are telling a character. Now, where are the characters? Or whatever they're saying, okay, fine, the characters are over here. And what do you see? What do you see around? Is that a forest, or is that a stomach? Or is that a mall? Or is that space? Where exactly our story is happening? Says, okay, it's not about only you. No, where is our story happening? Oh, it's happening over here. Is it happening inside our stomach? Okay, now these characters are there inside the stomach. How did they go inside the stomach? Okay, so that's where you are going ahead, and you're just triggering. You are not telling, you're just saying, oh, how did they go inside the stomach? All those things. So I'll just share one story. When we do storytelling with children, and of course the regular process of what, who, where, when, those things are there. Now,
Mm.
there was this child who told that once the cow came into the forest, and suddenly it went up on the tree. So I, as a teacher, I can say, oh, went up on a tree? Cows never go up on a tree.
Mm.
The moment I do that, so as because we are applying our logic of adults, so we say, the moment we do that, we have stopped the imagination of the child. There might be something he's thinking, how the cow is. What is my job over there? Oh, the cow went up on the tree. Wow, I've never seen a cow on the tree. How did it go on the tree?
Mm.
The moment I say how it went on the tree, I have taken the child into the space where he has to think, oh, how did it go? And you won't believe the child came up with an answer. The child told, Big Buddy, the child was running, the cow was running, and then suddenly, because there was a storm, the tree had fallen down, and the cow stamped on it, and suddenly the tree went up, and the cow was on the tree.
Yes,
So,
amazing.
so what are we talking about applying logic and saying all these things? So that is what I'm saying, that it's very important. Go ahead and just ask a small question and the child will come up with a story. Okay.
Absolutely. With that, I would like to talk about your IBAC, which is
Ah,
telling stories in your mother tongue. Very,
mother
very
language.
important. Mother language or parent language.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please tell us a little bit about why you thought about this, and how important is it for all of us over here, be it parents, be it teachers, to introduce language, the language of the place, the region that we belong to.
Yeah.
Why is it important, and how
Okay.
can we
It
do that?
started. I started IBAC. That is Indian Bhasha Art and Kahani. That is what IBAC is. So basically, I started that thinking. One was. So I'm from Odisha, so there are a lot of stories which my grandmother knew, what my father knows, but I was not aware of, because I've heard those stories, but it is, if I say, there are so many stories which are not documented, and if I started looking for it also, I was not getting the stories where I wanted to tell the stories. And that was one thing which just triggered the thought that tomorrow, if I want to look out for stories in Odia language and folk tales, normal stories which we go ahead and we what we have heard, unless it is documented, unless it is saved, our next generation will not know about it. Okay. And that's where it started. So we thought, why not with languages, stories with languages, and with a small idea that started with, no doubt last year it started. It was about heritage sites, it was about festivals, different kinds of festivals. There are a lot of stories behind festivals. We started putting that up in the page of IBAC. But we started thinking, why don't we make it a little bit more inclusive? Because the moment we say only in English, so there are many people who don't understand English, and there are many people who don't speak English. Okay, and there are many people who know their mother language, but there is no space where they can go ahead and tell a story in their mother language. That's when we thought about Indian language storytelling mandala. So Project
Mm.
IBAC has ILSM, that is for adults, where it was a circle of storytellers who wanted to tell a story in their mother language from their region. They tell stories, we share stories, we document those stories because it is the regional story, and we share it amongst all of us, so that tomorrow, if Vaishali has heard a Nagamese story, so Vaishali has the Nagamese story with her as well, which she can go ahead and share with other people. So that's how it
Mm.
gets documented and shared as well. So that was the purpose of ILSM. So what happened is, because of COVID, it's not only people in Mumbai, but it was so beautiful because now people have started calling in and saying that I want to tell a story in my mother language. And now we have like people waiting in the next month. There are already 5 people who are there. Again, for the next month, also 5 people are already there who want to tell stories in their language, mother language. And that's so beautiful and so powerful. So that is one for adults. But the thing is, when adults are telling the story, we do one thing. We tell, can you write the first letter,
Mm.
the script? And there was this person who could not write the script. And that is when she told, I feel very ashamed that I don't know the script of my language, and my child also doesn't know. I told, that is where your language is going to die after you go away, you pass away. And that is how languages die. So today, if my child doesn't know how to speak in his mother language or his parent language, the language from that generation dies. And as this is how language slowly is dying. And that is where we thought about uh, ILSM for adults and my pal, that is my parents' language for children. So children to come up and tell stories in the mother language and feel that it's very cool to speak in your mother language. It's if you can't speak your mother language, you're not cool. That's what. So English is important, not to take away anything from English, but not at the expense of your mother language. That is what we are talking about.
And can any child participate in this, or can any adult? Because there are lots of parents and teachers watching us today.
Yeah. Anyone, please contact us at Big Buddy World. We are there, and it's just a space so where we can share. And of course, we will go ahead, and we are thinking we have more plans towards it, which we'll be sharing. So yeah, it is taking shape, and people are getting interested, and that's what. It's stories, regional stories in your mother language. So about authors from your region, about folk tales of your region. So please read up about it. Your child reads up about it. You read up about it, and that's where it becomes very beautiful, and people get to know about it. So this month we have 5 languages: Telugu, Malayalam, Assamese, Nagamese, and Manipuri. So every
Manipuri.
month, 5 languages which we do. So that is how. Please do share stories in your mother language.
Please, everybody who's there, who's watching us today, please go visit IBAC's page on Facebook, and please go and like Big Buddy World as well, because you will get more information about storytelling and other activities on that page as well. But IBAC,
And please,
definitely, Lopa, I'm going to register. I'm
sure,
in the line as well.
sure. So please tell stories to your children along with English, also in your mother language. Let them know, because there are parents who are coming up and saying, my child doesn't know. And that's sad. That's
Yes,
sad.
that is sad. That is sad. Because Lopa, I don't know whether you know or not. I'm born in Orissa. So the first language that I learned, one of the first languages that I learned was Odia. And it's such a shame that I have lost touch with that language, and I really like speaking that language, because I never found anybody with whom I could talk in that language, because it has always happened that okay, we are meeting two people who speak the same language meet, and if we start speaking in that language, the third person who does not know the language might feel a little offended. So we
Offended,
kind
yeah.
of okay, go back to English. So this has
Correct.
always happened.
Correct.
So I think I feel very sad that I can't speak Odia that fluently as I used to when I was in Orissa.
Okay.
But I think this is a great way to connect with people who speak your language, and you can talk
Yeah,
to them
so
and you
we
can
have created
listen to
something
them.
called as Odia storytelling group. So people who can, so you can join that. So where you share stories in Odia. So of course, since I'm a storyteller, so that is the only intervention I can think of. There might be other things people can think of, and go ahead and start, where you can share stories in your mother language. You can form your groups and go ahead and share stories about your region, and because those are the things which will die if it is not shared. And as I told, unless and until we tell our stories, no one else is going to tell it for you. Okay,
Yes.
so it's your responsibility to go ahead and tell stories about your language, in your language, about your language, about your region. Yeah, as a responsible
Very, very
storyteller.
important. Okay, so time to take our questions and the comments from our viewers today.
Uh-huh.
Please type in your questions, and we have already many comments over here. I'll just scroll through, and yes, there is A question by Nargis Dodi. Nargis is asking, aren't the mundane and age-old versions also important? Isn't that the basis of traditional storytelling? Shouldn't the variation be introduced after telling the traditional story, which has been doing rounds for generations?
Yeah, of course. Of course, your traditional stories are important. I'm not taking anything away from the traditional stories. I'm just saying how you put across your traditional story. That is very important. You know, if I'm putting across a traditional story where I'm building, that's what I'm talking about, a single narrative, and then the child is going ahead with the thought process of believing that that is what is correct, that is what is, so that is where I have a problem. That means you are again feeding the same thing to what you have been fed with. So that is where you give that perspective, and along with that you go ahead and give the other perspective also. That is what I'm talking. Don't take away anything from the traditional story. You are selling that, but along with that, please get in the other perspective also. That is very
Mm.
important. So if I'm telling the story of Hidimba, for example, the moment if I tell the story of Hidimba and I say Hidimba was
Mm.
a demon, so
Mm.
that means the moment I do that, I am feeding that information to the child that the demon means with big eyes and this is what is creating that kind of narrative in the child. Oh, demons are bad, demons are like this, demons are like
Mm.
that. Why? That is because we have been told in that manner. But is that what is always right? No. So that is what I'm talking about. Don't take away from the story. Stories are, the purity is important, but along with that, provide the other perspective also. Okay?
How you say it also is very, very important.
Yeah.
How you say it.
How you say it. Oh, I mean, that is what. Because the moment I do all those things, I say anger. So that means the child thinks that anger has to be expressed in this manner. That is what I'm
Mm.
feeding to the child. That is what I'm feeding to the child. That is how you express your anger. No, there might be, and the child will feel, oh, that means if I'm not expressing my love or my anger in this manner, I am not fitting into that space. So all
Yeah.
those conditioning, that is what happens. So you don't get into that vicious cycle of being a part of that feeding in that conditioning. Because the moment you start telling stories and you do it in that manner, you are conditioning again your child to a certain pattern. So come out of that pattern. That is what I'm talking about.
Thank you. I hope that has answered your question, Nargis. Yeah. We have a question from Himani Jaiswal, and Himani is asking, can you please repeat the line on the lion and the hunter line?
So the lion, where the lion is saying that till the lion learns how to tell his story, the hunter will always be glorified. So
Yes,
it's
Himani?
very important. Imani, is it okay?
Yeah.
So yeah. So unless and until the lion knows how to tell a story, the hunter will always, of course, the lion can't tell his story. So the hunter will always be glorified, right?
Himani asks another question, and I think this is a very important question. She is asking, what's the intent? Uh, would that be what would that be? Okay, what is that we need to keep in mind? What is that crucial intent that we need to keep in mind while telling a story?
See, I think Vaishali and I also had a discussion about this. Remember,
Yes.
when we are telling a story, very important. What is the purpose of your storytelling? When you said intent, is very very important, because that if you are very clear about your objective, your purpose of your storytelling, and that is where everything will fall into place. Whether you want, is it for education, whether it is for just for the sake of entertainment, It can be for, or is it to save it as an art form, or is it for specifically for special needs children, like what Vaishali was talking about, or creating social impact, or what for a product, marketing a product. There can be various purposes of your storytelling. But when you talk about intent, it has to be very, very positive, first of all. Whatever be your purpose, but your intent needs to be very clear that whatever I'm talking about, for me as a storyteller, my intent is that tomorrow children go out of that stereotype. I don't want them to be in that stereotype, in that conditioning world. And if I can do that through storytelling, nothing better than that. So whether it is language, that English, that telling stories in English is always cool, that is again taking away from the stereotype. Whether we are talking about reading under the trees, when you're telling stories, it's very important that go out in the nature and stories are there in the nature. Just go ahead and be in the nature. Whether you're talking about, it's not always in the classroom. Okay, whether we are talking about stories, literacy, integrated storytelling can be used to teach anything, can be used to teach any concept you want to teach, you can teach through storytelling. Whether you're talking about stories using for adults, when we're talking about gender studies, where with women, when we're doing stories, it's more focusing on again breaking the stereotype. So for me, storytelling, my intent, my purpose, everything goes towards one particular purpose, that is break the stereotype through storytelling. Go ahead, and so you need to find out your purpose, your intent, think, and then work on your stories, and automatically all your stories will map towards that particular objective. How you
Absolutely.
treat your story also changes. The same story, Vaishali, because our objective is different, will treat it in a different manner. For me, I will treat it in a different manner because, of course, I'm talking about my objective and my intent and my purpose is different. So for me, if I take Savitri's story, I'll just share this because it's a very
Yes.
powerful story. Savitri and Satyavani's story. When Savitri and Satyavani's story, I have heard from the story is that she's a very devoted wife and she fasts for her husband, and you need to fast for. And this is what I have been fed with. And this is a very traditional story. Okay. Now, when I started reading up that story and I started peeling up the layers of the story, that's when I realized that Savitri was not only a devoted wife. Okay, what do we term as devotion? Again, that is a very conditioning which we have been fed with. But she was a risk taker. She took a risk. She knew that her husband is going to die within 1 year. She was a risk taker. She was focused. She she knew what to do. How, that is her aim. What her objective was, to deal with Yama. She she researched on her opponent just to know how to deal with her opponent. She knew about Yama in and out, and that's why she was prepared to deal with Yama. Okay, and she had excellent negotiation skills. That is why
Yes.
she could negotiate with Yama. So if you look at Savitri, this is what she was all. But no one has told us that story in that manner. We have been fed in a very different manner. But it's the same story. It is the traditional story. It is what we are not changing anything from the story. But yes, that perspective of Savitri has to come across. My goodness, she did not tell her story. Someone else is telling her story and they're putting it across her as something else, whether it is Mirabai's story. Mirabai, if I look at Mirabai, she is saying no. She said, no, I will not do it. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about, it's a traditional story. It is her story. We are not changing anything from the story. But there is this angle also. So that's where your perspective needs to be put across in stories. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a lovely answer. Um, So Nargis is asking this question, and I had the exact same question. Nargis, thank you for putting in the words over there. Um, can you suggest means to introduce this grand oral tradition to 15-year-olds? This is storytelling across the ages. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
always think that storytelling is for little children, maybe
Yeah.
maximum 10, 11, because the moment they are tweens or the moment they are teens, um, we feel, I don't know, I think it's just a notion that we have,
So
you
that is
know,
again,
that we
because that
have.
is what, yeah, we have been fed with. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about, Vaishali. That's what we are talking about. That the moment, yeah,
How do we introduce it?
create platforms. You are there. Create platforms where they share stories. Just go ahead, make it that it is for what exactly a teen loves. Think about all those things. What does a teen like? What are the teenagers like? What kind of
Mm,
stories will they like? Why will they come for a storytelling session? What are we doing to get them to that
mm,
platform? Are we doing anything towards that, or are we thinking that no, it's fine? So are we creating that kind of stories? Are we providing them those kind of stories where they have choices, where they have to think about, where there are intelligent where there are spaces for them to discuss?
mm,
That is where are we creating those kind of spaces? If not, then of course we can't blame them that they don't have that interest, because we are not providing them those kind of spaces. So that's where I'm talking about. Give them stories, we know what kind of things they should be knowing, and that is what we'll put across in a story. We can't sanitize our stories for them, right? Yeah. so
yeah,
so
I think
treat.
talking about traditional stories, we can definitely start with our traditional stories, like our mythological stories or Panchatantra stories, which are not just for little children. Panchatantra stories are as valuable and valid for us.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
as
And treat that story for that age group,
yes, put in logic there.
start.
I think the
Yeah.
moment you put in logic there, and try and question the teenager, that why do you think this happened? Like for Shikhandi, it's a story about gender. And you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you can introduce gender sensitivity through his or her story, Shikhandi Amba's story.
Exactly.
So I
So there
think,
is Sue Hollingsworth. There's a storyteller.
mhm,
Parents and teachers especially can look into. So she deals into personal storytelling spaces. She has worked on Cinderella's story so beautifully. So it goes into different layers. You might not have heard Cinderella's story in that manner, into so
mm,
many layers of relationships. So that's where, because for a teenager there are so many confusion, and you need to identify those areas. Put that across in your storytelling. Let it be a mythological story, let it be a traditional story, but get in those elements into your story. That's where they will try to find out answers, and you're providing a
mm,
space to think and discuss. And that is a
yeah.
space you are creating for them to discuss, and discuss without the fear of being getting judged, because that is again another fear. So that kind of a safe space, creating that kind of a space, that's where you can develop that interest towards story listening and storytelling, both the things.
And
Okay.
also, I think because of the lack of time, children don't, get that time to sit with their parents and just talk about,
Mm.
when we were young, even you would agree, Lobadi, that we used to just you know, sit and chat, tell stories,
But I
ask about stories, ask our parents, okay, what did you do when you were young? Children don't have the time right now. They want to ask,
but but
but
I
they don't
think
have the time.
but I think that I mean, the COVID situation has given that space where
Oh,
parents,
it's a blessing in
yeah,
disguise.
it's in some way the discussions are happening. Because I have a son who's 23, 24. So it's so beautiful when, because he's with us, so when we are sharing and talking about, experiences of our childhood and all those things. So these are moments which which would have never happened if not COVID. Because, of course, the child is far off, and when they come, they have the friends, they have the groups, and all those things happen. So, yes, it's very important for parents. Please, 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 your child will grow out of your lap very soon if you have small
Before you
children.
know it.
Yeah, so please go ahead and tell stories every day. You don't know what you are gifting them. You will realize that
Yes.
later, and your child will realize that later. Okay.
Lopa, we have many who have started telling us who they are, where they are from. So, Dr. Namrata is asking, is there a Kannada storytelling group as well? I think, Namrata, you can join IBAC and share your stories, and maybe you'll find some co-Kannada storytellers. What do you think?
Yeah,
What do
we
you have to
had
say?
one Kannada
Yeah.
storyteller. She had come over. She told a story. So, Namrata, right?
Yes,
What's her
Namrata,
name?
Dr. Namrata.
Dr.
Yeah.
Namrata, don't wait for anyone to start a Kannada storytelling group. So start a Kannada storytelling group, and people who can speak Kannada can join you over there. Okay, so start it. Just start it, and you can, if you want to share a story in Kannada language, please connect with us, and we will go ahead and we can have you in our storytelling platform. Okay, but
Okay, Sudha is
yeah,
saying that excellent message, Lopamudra ma'am. I used to weave my own story to correct my kids.
uh-huh.
Really,
Wow,
it's wonderful moment for me when they connect to what I'm trying to do and
wow,
say while I'm correcting their behavior. They understand that mom is telling me the
wonderful.
story so that I can.
And sometimes you can give them an opportunity to correct your behavior by they telling a story as well. So that gives both perspectives. Okay, balance it out. Okay.
Okay, Kavita is asking how important it is for kids to read books of foreign authors like
Mm-hmm.
their peers. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
she and I preferred Indian stories of everyday life, like
Mm-hmm.
stories in Pratham Tulika, Karadi Tales, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes she's trying to like wimpy kids because her peers are reading it and they discuss it. So she
Mm-hmm.
wants to read Wimpy Kid. However,
Mm-hmm.
I think she's not interested because she's skipping pages and reaches the end of the book. So
So,
I think she's
yeah,
talking about peer pressure
peer
and
pressure.
reading because the peers are reading the same book. Very
Yeah,
important.
I will tell you about a child. So, yeah, so very important. Make your child feel that what she is doing is correct. What she likes, and what she likes, that is important. And if very important in the sense, because there was this child who used to love mythological tales. Okay, and he used to only read mythological tales. And when this discussion used to happen, the same situation I'm talking about, and discussion used to happen about wimpy kids or all those things. So she used to say, I have not read. And that's where she said, you haven't read Wimpy Kid. So the child
Hmm.
said, well, okay, oh, I should be reading. And this is so that's when we told, okay, go ahead and say, oh, have you read this particular mythological story? Have you heard about this? Or have you heard about that? And they say, oh, you haven't read. So that is where you're coming across. In the sense, you create your ground, very important. Whatever you like, you do that and talk about it, because
Hmm.
that's very important. I know peer pressure, so if you want to talk, discuss about it, just go through certain books and you can say, yeah, I read them. I read, because unless and until you read them, you will not know whether you like them or you don't like them. So don't stop from reading it. So once you read it, then you decide that you didn't like it. If you didn't like it, why you didn't like it, so you have an answer for that. And that is what you tell your friends. And I like this because of this reason. I read that, I didn't like it. That is what you as a mother can tell your child, to go ahead and talk to her friends and everyone in that manner. And this child wonderfully, and of course that school had this quiz competition and all, where this child won some prizes and all, because he knew mythological stories.
Hmm.
So that even gave him a wonderful platform to feel good about it. So somewhere you as parent can create that kind of do a video of hers, let her share stories, which gives her a very positive feeling about what she knows. That is where it becomes important. You making her feeling positive for what she knows and what she likes. And then she goes ahead and takes that forward.
Great. Okay, Lopati, we'll just take one last question
Sure.
and then we'll come to an end of this webinar. The last question is, I'll pick Divya's question. Divya is asking, kindly advise few good books for bedtime stories. Very important question.
For me, books, as I say, with children for bedtime stories, I don't know. I take any story and I do it with children as per the requirement at that point of time. So books, if I say, I don't know, with children we do Julia Donaldson, your Indian authors. There are a lot of stories as well, mythological stories. Why not? It's not necessarily that bedtime stories are something separate, fairy tales are something different, has to be told in a different time. Again, that goes ahead and puts them into certain brackets. So go ahead, pick up whatever story you like. That becomes, you tell your story while sleeping, and that becomes a bedtime story, of course. And that is where the child starts to dream and listen to the story and go ahead. So go ahead, pick up books, read the reviews, and when you're telling your story, be careful about how and why you are telling the story, how you are telling the
Yes.
story, and why you're telling the story. Those two things are important.
So we have a regular viewer, Sanat Adhikari. He's joining us
Oh,
from yes, Sanat is here from
I know
Raurkela.
Sanat. Okay.
So I will take his question because it is again a very pertinent question. Sanat is saying that I have a concern. A powerful storytelling can trigger the minds of children against faulty value systems practiced within the four walls of their homes. How does a storyteller avoid being branded as an instigator?
I didn't actually get it. Yeah. What's the,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a kind of story that a storyteller is trying to say, and the intention is a certain kind of intention, and something completely opposite happens at home.
Mm-hmm.
So the storyteller is telling about telling a story about a father who is very loving, and
Okay.
then when the child comes back home, the father is
Mm-hmm.
not loving,
So
or
that's where
somebody is not loving. Yeah.
yeah. So that's where we are talking about now. The same thing. I think we had also this discussion, which I remember. I was talking about bullying and the story about someone getting bullied. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if I tell the story about the child who's getting bullied every time, and that child as a victim, okay, very sad, and the person who is bullying is the culprit and the bad person and all those things. So somewhere I'm again creating a single narrative. So that's where I'm talking about, if the person is bullying, there also might be a reason which I'm putting across in a story. Okay. Now, for example, if that is not dealt with, then somewhere we are only dealing with the concept of the person who's getting bullied. So for a child, if he is getting this information in a story about uh, a father who is loving and all those things, that's when the other perspective also needs
Comes
to
in
come in. So which we talked about in the initial part of our
beginning.
discussion. Yeah. That yes, so there might be children who have loving fathers, there might be children who don't have loving father, there might be children who don't have fathers also. So those things getting into the story, because that's where, when Sanat is saying this, it becomes that he's already thought about it, so he's already conscious about it. And that's the most important thing when I'm taking a story and telling. So whether I'm conscious about all these risks which are there, and whether when I'm telling the story, whether I'm integrating those things while I'm putting across a story, that becomes important. So even if I'm telling a Gruffalo story, where children must have heard about Gruffalo story, where there's a mouse and he goes and he goes and he comes back and comes back. So now when I'm telling a Gruffalo story, it's very something. Oh, he's a small one, but he's thinking about that. Oh, what can he do? We sometimes feel that we can't do it because we are small, we this, we are this. And sometimes we think, and sometimes there might be a big boy who must be thinking that, oh, he can do it. So what I'm doing all these things, I'm putting all these perspectives into it while I'm telling the story. So I'm making it more inclusive. So that's where, Sanat, wonderful, you've thought about it. So that's where when you're telling your story, that will come into your story telling. That perspective will come into your
Yes.
storytelling when you're telling your
Because the
story.
intent is there. Because the
The intent
intent is
is
there.
there because you have already thought that there might be a child. If I don't think about that, that is where I become little irresponsible when I'm telling my story. But you have already thought about it, that I'm telling a story about a child who's loved by the father. So now there might be a child who doesn't have a father or he's not loved. So how am I going to put across this story? Because now my treating of that story changes because I've already
Mm.
thought that there is a child like that. But if I don't think that, then my treating of the story will be very different. Treatment of the story. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we think is, storytelling and doing drama and all that madness, there is always a method to that. And
Of
that's
course,
the
of
reason,
course.
yeah, there's always a method to that. And that's the reason it is very important to choose the storyteller that you're sending your child to choose the stories that you choose for your, you choose to tell your students or your children at home. Responsibility comes there. I think everything starts with responsibility. And I can't thank you enough, Lopamudra, for
Thank
bringing
you.
such delightful ideas. Somebody has just written, Ayush is saying, now tell a story. Can we end our session with a short story by Lopamudra Mohanty?
Huh. Okay, short story. Okay. Um, yeah. So there was this boy who every day loved to go to a place, and his name was Ron. And Ron, he started going out of his house one day early in the morning. He ran out of his house, and his friend said, "Ron, stop, stop! No, I'm going somewhere. I have a very important work to do." And he ran. And then his another friend met him, and he said, "Ron, stop, stop, stop!" And that's when Ron said, "Don't stop me. I'm going somewhere, and I have very important work to do." And he left. And he reached a place. This huge door. And he was standing over there in front of the door. And he was waiting. And there suddenly Mrs. Smith, who came in, and she opened the door. And as Ron entered the door, it was a library. Ron looked at the library and his eyes started to shine. He saw different kinds of book, but at that point of time he was looking for one kind of book, where the cover page had someone who had skin color of his, which was quite black in color as compared to my skin or your skin, but he could not find a single book like that. He looked down, he looked up, everywhere he looked, but he could not find a single book. And that is the point, okay, he settled for something he likes, the second best thing what he likes, and that is about
Plane,
aeroplanes.
aeroplane.
Yes, exactly. And he took a book. He took that book and he went near the librarian, Mrs. Smith, remember, who had opened the door. So she went and she told Mrs. Smith, "I want to take this book home." And the moment Ron told that, everyone looked at him and they said, "What?" Because that was the time children who had, or people who had skin color like Ron, were not allowed to take books home. They can read it there, but they can't take it anywhere. And that is when Ron He went up on the table and he said, Mrs. Smith, I want to take this book home. Mrs. Smith, Ron, you know this. You know the rules, right? Says, I don't know. Why can't I take questions? Of course, you should ask this question. Yes or no? Does your skin color matter of taking a book or not taking a book? That's when Mrs. Smith called his mother. His mother came. Everyone came. The police. Then they called the police. But Ron did not understand. He did not get down from the table and he told, I want to take this book home. And that is the point. Mrs. Smith went back, got the register, and put a stamp. And that was the first time Ron McGrain held a book under his arm, other hand holding his mother's hand. And both of them walked out of the library with a smile. And that is the day Ron McGrain changed everything. So even if you are small, whatever dreams you have, my children, please go ahead. And if you think it is right, go ahead and ask questions. It's important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, for loving us, and for sharing all your ideas. And definitely IBAC is something that is very special, very new, very fresh. And I would really urge all of you who are watching us today, please join this huge storytelling community of regional storytellers, and let's build the tribe.
Yes,
Thank you.
let's build it. Wonderful. Thank you, Vaishali, and thank you, Joy of Drama, for this wonderful platform that I could share something which are small dreams, but I'm sure they will, with all of us together, we can create wonderful, responsible storytelling and storytelling in Indian languages. Yay!
Yay! Thank you and have a great evening. Thank you,
Stay
everybody.
safe, everyone. Yeah.